Today, we are not just going to play the game. In fact, I'm not going to play the game at all today. I have enlisted some volunteers of different skill levels, and we're going to go ahead and watch their PBs, and I'm going to analyze them based on a little bit of like criteria that I've been developing. And the idea is that because they're at 3 different skill levels, you know, I'm hoping that anybody who watches this is going to take something away from this to improve their own game. Because I think that as you develop as a speedrunner in any game, there are different things that you kind of have to start looking for. So this stream is going to be dedicated to, you know, figuring out what those things are and how you can become a better runner through more efficient practice, and maybe open your eyes to some things that you weren't looking at before that can maybe help you reach the next level. And the reason that I picked 3 different volunteers from 3 different skill levels is because I think that each of these steps is a pretty integral step along the journey. I asked for somebody with a PB between like 110 and 115, and I think that it's a pretty well-established benchmark is that once you get a 110, that's kind of when people look at you as a speedrunner and go, oh, this guy's taking it seriously. If you have a 110, that's kind of when you start entering the territory of like, oh yeah, girl, I'm grinding. I'm doing this. So the first one that we do is the 110 to the 115. My volunteer for this, by the way, is a runner named Codiferous. You probably know who they are. Maybe you've seen them in the community before. Their PB is 110.20. Their run will be the first that we kind of look at. Now, like I said, 110 is kind of the benchmark where people start to take your runs pretty seriously. That's like you're only 10 minutes off of world record, essentially. So that's when you know that you're actually giving it some effort, you're giving it some time, you're giving it a lot of focus. That period of time right before you get a 110, like 110 to 115, you've like basically just broken out of becoming a beginner, and you're starting to realize, you know, you have a really good grasp on the controls at this point. You kind of know that if you press a certain button, Mario is going to behave a certain way. You have that down in your head. It's on lock. That part's fine. It's just about kind of dialing in on how to use that effectively, I think. And I really want to point out that I don't want to be too nitpicky about it. Like, I'm not going to try and dial in on the individual runner and be like, oh, you f***ed that up. You know what I mean? This is going to be more of a broad coverage of like what it takes to kind of upgrade from the mentality that you're in right now. All right. So obviously kind of got by the light post there, but you can see, like, if you compare that movement to the movement that you see as you start to get up into the higher levels, you can tell that his line kind of went around the ramp and up the ramp rather than cutting across it. And one thing that I'm probably going to be mentioning a lot in this video and in the 105 PB, again, I haven't watched any of them, but the 105 PB especially will probably be focusing on lines and making sure that, like, if you have to get from point A to point B, that you are going in the most direct path that you possibly can. I think one thing that beginners can kind of look at top level runs and they go, ooh, I want to do that. Tricks are not the important thing here. I think one statement that really comes up a lot when you start speedrunning Super Mario Odyssey is that movement saves minutes, tricks save seconds, right? So I think Cody's really smart for not going for stuff like left side at this skill level because, you know, if you miss left side, you lose way more time than if you just chose the safer option, right? And I'm hoping that that kind of mentality, that sentiment does stay through. I don't think that you should go for things that you are not comfortable doing yet. If it's going to kill your run or if it's going to consistently lose you time versus actually using it, then you're going to have problems. And somebody in the 110 to 115 range, they probably have the route in the back of their head. Like, they know what moons they're going to be getting. I think that that is inherently built into the skill set of a runner with a 110 to 115. I think they know where they're going now. It's just a matter of coming to the realization that there is something that you should be doing in every moment, right? So pathing is really important. Taking straight lines is really important, but you should never be questioning the next move that you have, all right? So, like for example, right there, I mean, I think he got up to the dyno just fine, but if you spaced out your jumps properly, you could also just dive up to the top platform, maybe with a cap throw for safety. You don't have to do the wall jump. You can actually make it up there with just a dive. And knowing that, and knowing that that is going to be your move every single time is going to save you time because you're going to be following the same line every time. Now, I did mention something about like movement saving minutes, tricks saving seconds. movement is definitely the most important thing. There are certain tricks in this run that I would recommend absolutely using, like Dino Skip. I think saves way more time than it's worth just like not bothering to learn it. So you can see Cody use that. Moon Cave Skip. And I would even say that once you get to like 110, you should definitely start working on the boss fights in any percent. There aren't very many of them. So if you don't know how to do your bunnies fast and you don't know how to do the Bowser fights fast, like getting up to the hats and doing the backflip strat, I think that's really, really important. That saves like huge chunks of time, and they're really not that hard to learn. Once you have 110, you should have the understanding of Mario's moveset to be able to do those, and I think those are really important. I couldn't tell from the video footage whether he went for DSTA. It doesn't look like he is. But his cascade exit, according to his splits on the side here, is a 606. And if you actually watched my DSTA video, you'll know that I actually don't recommend DSTA for anybody who has a time over 6 minutes. You can still set it up. It's just that you would have to set it up for a time of like 152 and then have to wait like 50 seconds. And like, if you're still kind of in the realm of leaving cascade way later than that, it really isn't worth adding something that only saves 7 seconds. Your consistency probably isn't there to do the trick well anyways. And now something you can be doing here, a little bit of tech that not everybody knows about. If you are holding one of the boost buttons for the bullet bill, either X or Y, and you shake once, if you let go over X and Y and continue shaking for all of the ones and do like a rhythmic shake, like shake every time you need to, you'll actually get a bigger boost than if you keep holding X or Y there. Easy time save for free. No nut clip route here. That's important to note as well. So like I mentioned at the beginning, not really going for like the serious tricks. Don't blame them for this, because nut clip is really unforgiving. If you don't have the confidence to be able to pull off the nut clip route and save the time, then you shouldn't go for it. Now the cool thing about this room is that there's so many different ways to do it. As long as you make the cycle, you're going to be okay. And you know what? Cody actually missed the cycle here. And so basically all you have to really do to kind of fix this so that you don't run into issues where you're taking damage by going through the fuzzies or something is just know that it is a consistent cycle every single time, and just try and tighten up your movement just a little bit at the beginning. You can either do like a spin pound to get up into the ceiling secret, or you can maybe just tighten up your dives a little bit. But as long as you're getting back into the water, like when it's still at the surface, then you're going to be okay. So yeah, I can definitely see, just from observing, I can see that they have a really good grasp of the controls. They know how to make Mario move around. It's just a more of a sense of having a little bit more confidence in that and pushing it to the abilities. And, you know, that takes time, right? And again, smart choice. I think that one of the most important things that you can do is just, in your runs, you should not be going for the things that you don't think you can do. Like, I know I get a bit of a reputation for going for all the really stupid stuff, like IP skip and DSS and all that kind of stuff. I have a reputation for taking that on really, really early. And I think that a part of that is that it's really early in the run, so I don't feel so bad about it. But the other part is that I know that in a day of attempts, I will get at least a handful of runs past that point. I have the confidence in that. But if you don't have that confidence, then you shouldn't do it, is basically what I'm saying. All right, now, I'm curious to see if the Bowser fight goes the way that I think it's going to. Ooh, they do it. Okay. Missed the hat. And I think the reason for that is because you are supposed to jump before you actually do arrive at the platform. Otherwise, you will be too low to grab the hat. You know why that one didn't work? I'll tell you why. You were a little bit too far away. You were a little bit too far away from the hats. I know you don't want to be too close, because if you're too close, you can backflip and you might just take damage from the hat. But you were too far away there. You kind of want to be somewhere in the middle of the ramp rather than like right at the bottom of it. And this one, obviously, you don't have to worry too much because you are doing the damage boost, so you can be as close to the hat as you want to. I think the problem that you had there was just that you were kind of poorly positioned. And also looked like your cap throws were a little bit late on every face as well. Oh no! You know, my recommendation for this, it's very tempting. I know we were talking about lines and like taking the most direct line to get to places. With that one, because death is right below you and you're doing the beginner strat anyway, it's probably a little bit better to maybe cut it a little bit wide and maybe do a cap bounce so that you can like line yourself up underneath the bridge just a little bit easier rather than trying to beeline it for it. Because, you know, if you die there, you're going to end up losing a lot more time. You could just stand on the bridge from the top and like maybe jump off the bridge and dive underneath it that way. So now here's a good example of lines, right? You obviously took the safe path to get over there by making sure that you always had solid ground underneath you, but because you rolled up the ramp, it also lost all of your speed, so like all of your momentum was just killed. And if you had instead like jumped over the ramp, then you might have been able to maintain some of that momentum. All right. So I think, okay, so you might be wondering, why didn't Mario sit down there? I think it was because Cody was playing with the camera. Little known fact, Mario will not sit down in the chair if you are inputting anything. That includes changing the camera. So if you're fiddling around with the camera, Mario won't sit down. So as soon as you hit the bench, hands off the controller until he starts sitting down. I don't remember if she went for scooter clip. She's on the scooter, so yeah. Let's see. Now, there is an equilibrium with tricks, right? There is eventually a time where, like, going for the trick but doing it really slowly is not going to benefit you over not going for the trick and doing, like, the regular way fast. And I think that you probably crossed the threshold there, but at the same time, there is some benefit to be gained by putting it in your runs if you're confident in doing it, just allowing your skill level to eventually compound into making it save you time, right? Learning it earlier so that it's easier for you later. I think that's important. But there's only so much of that you can do, right? Like if you think of Flower Road Skip is the kind of trick that if you miss it, you lose 20 seconds, right? Scoot Clip is the kind of trick where if you miss it, you probably are just bonking into a wall and you just have to drive a little bit more, right? So it's not going to lose you as much time. You really have to like balance your risk factors there. Oh, a little bonk into the fence. Now there's an example of movement that like maybe I wouldn't recommend doing. If like roll cancels and maintaining your momentum is something that even I struggle with sometimes. So in a sense, like learning a slightly easier way to get around that corner can probably save you time from the fact that you bonked into the fence, right? The takeaway here from like all of these examples mostly is that you should not be going for something because it is supposed to be fast. You should be going for the thing that you can do consistently, because the more consistent you are, the more likely it is that you're going to stay nice and tight with your sum of best. And once you have come within like a certain threshold of your sum of best, that's when you can kind of start pushing forward and you can start adding things, broadening your sense of comfort, I guess. And another thing, okay, so I did say that at this level, at the 110 to 115 range is probably when you are starting to really grasp the concept of the controls. The one thing that really gets underrated and nobody ever talks about it, and I think it's really important to talk about, is camera. Nobody really talks about the camera and how important it is to control the camera, but camera control is so important. Because if you're looking in the right direction, like I mentioned earlier, you can avoid value dives with proper camera positioning. You can better know where you're going. You can usually line up your dives a little bit nicer. All of these things are really important due to the camera. So camera is something that you shouldn't overlook. And like when I play, I use like basically the heel of my thumb, like this part right here. I use that to control my camera like all the time. Every moment of free time where I'm not mashing buttons with my right hand, usually I'm adjusting the camera to exactly the place that I want it to be. And it's a blessing and a curse to have a game that has a dynamic camera, because, you know, the camera can be in an infinite amount of spaces around Mario. So making sure that you are keeping consistent with that is really important. And figuring out where the camera is the most beneficial is also really important. As a beginner, go for consistency instead of speed. All around, from beginner to intermediate to advanced, consistency over speed. But you should be like implementing speed as a result of being more comfortable with what you're doing, right? You shouldn't be going for speed for the sake of speed ever, because you're probably not going to finish runs if you can't do the speed, is what I'm trying to say. Yeah, like for example, right there, camera is really important, right? Cody was kind of like looking down into the snow the entire time when while they were rolling, all they're doing is holding a trigger and shaking so they could be adjusting their camera up so that they can see where they're going. Like that is a really important thing to kind of just make sure that you know that you're more capable of doing the things that you're doing. You're more on top, you're more in control. Dipping under here. Now, we're talking about lines. Seaside is a kingdom where lines really matter. And it looks like Cody's actually trying to take the lines as tightly as possible. You can see they got a fish bonk there. But really tried to cut the corner. That's basically what we're looking for. This line, a little bit questionable. Like, you definitely could have been more beeline towards the hole rather than kind of curving around and going in it. But that might have been because they've gotten fish bonks there in the past as well, right? But Seaside, like, all of the time loss that happens in Seaside at the top level is happening in the fish part. Like, for you to take really good lines when you're swimming with a fish makes all of the difference in Seaside. Otherwise, Seaside is going to look basically the same at the top level, and you'll be like, well, why is Stravos like 3 seconds faster than you, Dangers? It's because he's taking better lines than I am. Simple as that. Does the fish clip? And again, fish clip is like, it's a beginner strat. I recommend it. Okay, I have a recommendation, all right? The easiest thing you can do for this, first of all, turn your camera so that you're like facing towards where the hole in the wall is. You're still looking out of bounds. You're still looking out all the way over there. So turn your camera so that you're looking back inbounds. Secondly, I would swim horizontally towards the hole as close as you can and then swim directly down next to it. That way you don't have to worry about like coming in a diagonal and like clipping in, because that can cause some scary situations. You can see what you're doing here is you're coming in kind of directly at it and then using your spin attack and hoping you don't come out of bounds. And that's really scary. So if you can kind of come down and like run parallel with the wall rather than like dip down and directly towards it. I know that's the fast thing to do, but like if you can run parallel with it, you'll be way safer and you'll never have to worry about that again. Now, luncheon. Luncheon's fun. Everybody loves luncheon. Top runners are getting like low 6-minute times, like 6-minute flat in their luncheons, which is kind of insane. This is one kingdom where like you can almost always improve in luncheon. Like it's hard for me to really understand how to get a perfect luncheon in this game. I just don't think it exists. I don't think it's possible. Oh boy. See, now this is why luncheon is such a hard kingdom to master, is because like there are so many different ways to do everything in this kingdom, and picking the fastest one is usually a really hard thing to do. Luncheon is just rapid fire, difficult things, one after the other. So that's another example right here, by the way. Pulling the turnip out of the ground and going over towards the soup pot. I would recommend getting your camera in a position where it's easier to see what you're doing. Usually what I do is I position it in behind Mario, tuck it like right in between the shop and Mario as you're kind of going down there so that you have a better vantage point. Yeah, don't blame me for taking the back up here too. It's so hard for me to try and describe how to get up this wall because it doesn't really make sense at all. It doesn't really make sense how the lava bubble jumps higher than it does other times. Notice right here, I'm going to teach you a little thing. You can save 0.5 seconds if you stop doing this thing. Don't dive. Let yourself fall naturally. Falling naturally takes Mario from here to the ground. Diving takes Mario from here up to here and then to the ground. You'll save 0.5 seconds by not diving. I don't suppose Cody mentioned if we were playing on 1.3 or not. This is 1.3, okay. So for reference, Cody's gold in Ruined is a 321. And while there's not a whole lot that you can actually do to change what happens in Ruined, it's just a boss fight and just the movement from the Odyssey to the sword pulls. A 321 versus what the world record holder for Ruined Kingdom gets a 312. So even in a kingdom where that is the only difference, there's still 10 seconds of leeway there. It just kind of opens your eyes to the idea that you can tighten up everything. Everything can be improved. And in the case of like how to improve Ruined, it all comes down to optimal sword pulling, and it comes down to that beginning movement. That's all. And the dive. Don't dive. Now, Bowser's is like platforming hell. So I will not blame anybody for taking, you know, especially at a beginner level, for taking the kind of the easy road here. The little jump at the beginning might just because you were not fully paying attention. That kind of stuff can happen. I think that there's definitely a bit of an interesting reputation with like downtime. Even when there is downtime, usually you're mashing buttons or something like that. Something is happening. Something is always going on. Optimal mashing can save you like 10 to 15 seconds over the course of the run. Like that kind of stuff matters. Even though it doesn't look like anything's actually physically happening, you just can never let your guard down, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And let's see how they do these shards. There's like 100 different ways to do the shards. So, going for... Oh, interesting little roll cancel, just kind of like fumbling about. That honestly is a pretty common thing to happen. And honestly, like I said, I could go and criticize how this is being executed, but this is, I think in my opinion, probably the hardest bit of platforming in the entire run. This shard section. The way that you do this has got to be so tight, and if it's not, then you do bleed time really easily. But you also can't blame anybody for really not doing this exactly the fastest way, because it's just such a hard section. There's not much to really say about that. You definitely, like, if you're going to look to working on fixing that, you could save probably about 10 seconds with the method that you use just in your movement. That would just come down to stuff like, you know, using more direct lines for things, a little bit less pauses in between your jumps, all that kind of stuff. You can save about a second there as well. So Harriet's fight actually starts when you touch the ground. You have to be a little bit in the arena, but you have to touch the ground. And I'm not sure if the triple jump was intentional, but if you land closer to the edge of the arena, you'll save time because you're arriving at the ground earlier. Ooh, okay. I understand what's going on there. I understand that you took the jump. See, now that's why. So I think that's just a matter of like learning the timing more properly. You're the first one, you actually took the conscious effort to like jump diagonally towards the hat so that you were hitting it as it was moving. That's really risky. Instead, what you can do is you just got to like dial in on what the timing is supposed to be and just jump on the hat before it starts moving, and you'll have a much easier time with that. But you use the same timing for your jumps in both phases, but you jump directly towards the hat in the second phase, which is why you missed it. Now let's see. I'm not sure what method you're going to use for this. There's so many different ways to do this fight. Okay, we're doing the bird method. So don't blame me for this. I don't think I started doing birdless until I had like a 107. Getting the first hit on Spewart by doing it this way. But now bird is gone, and we're just going to stay on top. Interesting choice, though. I don't know if I would do it this way. Now, the reason I don't like that choice is because now you have to hit the back one. And the back one is probably the hardest one to hit on this phase. You got it, but you could have saved 2 seconds if you saved it for the second one instead. It's a little bit risky, but you can like crouch walk off the side and do a ground pound to save the time. Honestly, that fight gave me a little bit of a heart attack watching it. I feel like even like the fastest strats might be a little bit more simple than what you just did. Aside from the bird strat. The bird strat is consistent. But yeah, you don't have to end on Rango. Like, leave Harriet for the top one. Leave Harriet for last. Leave Harriet for last. That's fine. It might be in your best interest to do one of the side ones. If you're looking to upgrade your mech fight, that would be the first step, is leaving one of the side ones for next, like next to last, and doing the crouch walk off the side. It can be consistent, I promise. It can be. It sucks, but it can be consistent. Then again, that whole fight sucks. Every new step that you try and learn, that fight is going to suck. Moon Kingdom. Now, movement is wonky here. I think that over my entire history of playing Moon Kingdom, it's been kind of like an enigma. I've never really understood where my time save was coming from. I never really understood what made me faster. And I think that that is true from when I had like a 520 right up until the time that I have now. Maybe even like a 530. And around the corner. Now, this is when I'm talking about lines. Lines are really important. You could definitely save like probably about a second or two if you just stayed really nice and snug up next to the wall instead of going around it like you did. Oh. Threw Cappy in the wrong direction there, and you're going to be a little bit too far away. Yeah. The best thing to do if you're going to go for the beginner strat, like the non-spin throw roll cancel version, is to throw Cappy back like while you're kind of in the vicinity of them still, and then hold Cappy out until you're like right on the edge of that platform. Maybe that's what you tried to go for. You maybe just didn't hold Cappy out long enough. Still happens every now and then. That again, going back to the cloud fight, the reason that you didn't get that hat was actually you were in the right spot. I think you were in the right spot. I think that that one was just because you threw your cap a little bit too late. Just a little bit earlier next time. And now let's see our escape. You are taking the straight B line on the edge of the platform. That's good. Again, tight lines. This probably only saves you like 0.5 a second, but it's good. And see, you can tell that she's a real gamer because she doesn't do XD skip. All right, another example of, you know, camera movement. There are a couple places in this game where camera does fight with you a lot. This is one of them. But that's where I'm saying, like, you just kind of have to learn to adapt to that. Always be looking at your target, and you just kind of have to wiggle the control stick, the right stick, in the direction of where you want to be looking so that you know where to aim your fireballs, because you probably would have gotten them in the first 5 or 6. I think you might have even, but it would have been easier for you if you were looking in the right direction. 110-20 was that PB. And I think the major takeaways from this, honestly, like, your sum of best is a 108-19. And the reasons that you did not get those were because you just kind of had some big major errors. And also just need to learn how to gather your consistency in the things that you're already doing. GG's on your PB. To take it to the next level here is basically just like really dialing in on taking more direct lines, having a little bit more confidence in your movement. And if there are things that you have done in the past that have not really worked for you because you have to fight the camera or something like that, just learn, maybe do that section like a couple of times over and see what you can do to fix that. Just adjust the camera mid-game play. I think that camera is your weak suit. I'm just going to go out on a limb and say that camera was probably your weak suit throughout that entire run. And if you can learn how to manipulate the camera while you're playing a little bit better, it will make the difference in being able to go faster easier. That's what I'm going to say about that run. Otherwise, really well done. And that wraps up the very first part of this series. I looked at 3 different speed runs at different skill levels. So if you want to catch part 2, make sure you hit that subscribe button. And as always, if you have any questions about speedrunning yourself, feel free to drop by the Twitch stream. Come visit us, come check us out. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.